Welcome to the CrÆtive Mind Podcast. This is a very exciting moment for me because we are finally going to share our first episode we recorded about 2 months ago. So this podcast is going to capture conversations between Jeff Hallman and me, Maike Doehling, and we are also going to have some wonderful guests in our show. But this episode is kind of the transition between the old podcast, Actors and Mind, and the new one, since in the beginning, this should only be an episode in my former podcast. And we were planning to talk about Jeff's acting career, but instead something completely else happened, which in the end led to the decision to host this podcast together, which was actually not a decision, but something that kind of naturally happened. So yeah, what you will be listening today is the conversation that actually captures the initial connection between us. This is how everything started. This is the very beginning, the seed of something we today call purpose.
La 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 la, bling, and we start.
Yeah, I see your photos or your videos of where you are, and it's like, God, what am I doing to myself? Just staying in this cold winter Germany. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, this morning was also. Oh my God. I mean, I walk up on this, it was a volcano, and I walk up on it twice a week or something like that. Wow. And today I found another path, and then I walked it and it stopped. And then I thought, okay, I don't want to go back. Maybe I just go up. And then I went up and it was so steep that I thought, oh my God, I was afraid. And then I thought, but I won't go back now, because going down is as dangerous now as going up. Mm-hmm. And then I continued going up, and I thought that's exactly how life is as well, because I ended up on the top. And that's actually also a mirror of my life at the moment, like trying out new things and seeing where I end up.
Which is, for me, it's fascinating that we're doing this now, because
yes.
the exact same for me. But for me, like my current place of aware nurturement is conversation, like really connecting with people that are somewhat in the same realm as it currently is as I am in my wherever the fuck I am doing. But for me, it's just so, it's like talking into a mirror, but people with different experiences. Mm-hmm. When you connect with someone who is also trying to figure out this puzzle, and then dissecting how other people, with that reflection, dissecting how other parts of you, which is other people are going through, and how, anyway, this is, I could jump down a rabbit hole of the fear conversation. And
I could talk about so many other things now.
Well, I mean, seriously, like, this is why my intuition told me in the very beginning when we had a conversation, I was like, we're going to have to do a series. That we're going to have.
We have to do a series.
Because there's just far too much to navigate. And it's even standing and looking at the forest with the different paths. It's like, okay, which fucking one do we go on? Because we can go here, we can go there, we can go this.
Yesterday evening, I had a client, and it was so weird because I was in front of my computer and I thought, do I want to do this? And this question is really weird because I like what I do, and I feel that I have an effect on people's life. I help them find their way. But at the moment, it feels like maybe it's not. Don't know.
Can I ask a simple question?
Yes.
Does it feel organic, like naturally? Does it feel forced, or does it feel like this is happening at its own will?
The coaching itself?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't really know what you do. I don't know if I want to know yet. I kind of feel like I want to experience, like, as we go along through our journey. But I have a really good idea. But yeah, I guess the question still stands.
The whole coaching thing, it feels like it's really what I'm talented in, and I ask the right questions. I trigger people, and they have their moments, and they change their life. And once I'm in the Zoom call, it doesn't matter if it's one-on-one or if it's a group. I feel like I don't know what time it is, and it feels like in a flow. And I can trust myself that sometimes I think, what did just come out of my mouth? So it feels right. But at the moment, it feels like I have to reinvent myself.
Again, I always give myself a buffer before I say anything that spits out of my mouth, because I don't pretend to know anything. Okay. But at the same time, this makes complete sense, because that's where I'm getting at in my journey. I enjoy conversating with people. I know how to hit certain spots in people's consciousness sometimes to spark something to awareness. And I'm also simultaneously doing it for myself. That's the beautiful part of it, is as I'm conversating with somebody else. And so many people would just reach out to me and just to ask me the most random things. And I find myself being like, okay, that's odd. And next thing you know it, I jumped right into their flow, and they get something from it. I get something from it. And I'm like, what is that? Like, and I've never felt so, my purpose has never felt so strong. It's the same as storytelling. In a way, it is exactly that. It's storytelling, because that's all this is. It's one big story. And
what is your purpose?
Oh, that's a precise question. If I'm honest, I feel like a witness. I'm a witness to everything. I feel like I'm fixated with the I, and I never really knew why. I really didn't. I truly didn't. But it's presenting itself. The further I go, the deeper I go, and the more I learn, and the more I fail, and the more I experience, I realize that. But that's just what I'm doing. What I feel like a visitor. I feel like a witness. I feel like a regurgitator of happenings, because I can't function the way that a lot of other people can function. I can't get into the vibe of just getting through life, just getting on page, doing the necessary things you need to do to survive in what we built in this, or somewhat other humans have built for us to survive in. I'm so lost and numb and useless in that on that path. And the only thing that really makes sense to me is that I'm here to witness whatever's happening. And I don't know why yet. And I guess part of feeling like a witness is that when you witness something, you then have a story to tell. Therein lies the storyteller. So it's all connected in this weird web of, because in order to feel different, that fear of being different pushes me to, or has always pushed me to reach beyond my means in that place of my life, like being in Alabama, deciding that I'm just numb. I'm at this point, I know that I'm just a pawn in life, and I can't understand the place of being a pawn. So I try to pretend that I'm a knight. And somewhere along the way, I become the knight, and then I realized that, oh, Jeff, you're calling yourself chess pieces and pretending that your ego's playing with yourself right now, but this is also pushing you to widen your perspective, or I don't know where I'm going with that kind of answer, but to go back down to the very precise question that you asked, is I just feel like a witness, and I enjoy conversating with other people that I feel are also experiencing and witnessing the same things that I am. It's almost like we get together and we're like, oh, do you see this shit? How do you feel? This is how I feel. What the fuck's going on? Wow, this is fascinating. this is kind of how I feel when I talk to people in the same realm as my own consciousness. So whether that's high, low, or whatever the fuck it is,
We are already again at that point with the consciousness thing. But I have to say this now.
Mm.
I mean, we are recording anyway, so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
While you were talking, I saw this painting in the background. And I thought, when I had this 2 days ago at the breath work, I had my eyes closed, and when I opened them, I saw so many colors. I mean, everything was like stronger than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this experience was much more, but since then, I think like we come back to the fear thing. Once we go through that fear, once we let go of our tension in our body, once we dive into that, whatever happens then beyond our comfort zone, maybe this is the truth. So I also don't know where I'm going with that, but what were we talking about your purpose?
I don't feel as much as I have a purpose as I'm having an experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But with what you're talking about, this perception of this crystal clear colors, this experience that you had, again, is right in line with what I also had in Switzerland, which I'm assuming that you've done some kind of breath work like Wim Hof or something like in this realm to have experienced this, which is quite beautiful, actually. I haven't achieved that kind of breath work yet to get there, so I think that's quite amazing. But I also think set and setting has a lot to do with that. But this fear that we keep circling, which like I can't express enough how I've discovered for myself how big of a player fear is in life. It's almost getting to the point where I've almost, and I could be completely off on this, but I'm kind of realizing this as I'm saying it to you, that fear is life. Like that is, we always call it life and fear, but it's the same thing. We're terrified to be alive. Everything we do, but not just us, not just humans, but like nature. Like I have a rabbit, right? I have a rabbit in my house because my son wanted a rabbit, and it's instinctively just fearful all the time. Like it knows me, whatever. But if I come in the room too fast, it doesn't know what's going on. It freaks out, But it's in its nature to feel, and it's fear is not a horrible thing. Like fear is something that saves us in a lot of ways. It also holds us down in too many ways, which is the biggest problem, because I feel that fear holds a majority of our society in a trance, and we're trying to weave through that trance. And speaking of fear, since we're talking about this, and I had really this, of all the things we were going to talk about, this is one thing that I did not plan on talking about, but since we were talking about it now, it feels just right to say, because it is fear. I was never really scared of getting COVID, if I'm honest. Kind of just intuitively knew that I kind of take care of myself to certain levels where, anything can happen, but I was never really scared to get it. In a weird way, when I found out that I actually had gotten it, I was a little bit relieved. I'm like, oh, finally I can get through. I can get this out. I have 6 months of freedom. Yes. And also, mind you, that I didn't officially know that I had COVID until I got through the worst parts, right? The nights of muscle aches and headaches, and never really had a fever. But when I lost my taste and smell, I was like, okay, now it's time to get a PCR test, because I don't trust these antigen tests because I smell nothing. So anyway, I got through the worst parts before I realized that I had COVID. I was a little bit relieved, never been really fearful of it. But that's where life, fear, whatever whatever it is kind of kicks in, because here I am isolated in my flat with me and two birds and a rabbit. And and I feel this thing inside of me. Like I feel it. And for me, even though I'm not scared of it, it's the most disgusting feeling that I could ever experience, to be with, to have it inside of my vessel. It was so disgusting to a point that it kind of got me to where I became a little bit fearful of it, because 11 months ago, or yeah, a little over, I was in Florida, and I held my mother's hand for 8.5 hours after they took the ventilator off of her, and I watched this fucking virus suck the life out of her as I held her hand. And then I had this disgusting thing inside of me. And it's that kind of mental challenge that I had to kind of face. Like, this thing took my mother in the worst way, and now it's inside of me. And it was this anger that turned into fear. Even though I knew in the beginning, my whatever I am told me, like, you don't, there's no reason for you to be fearful of this. But then when it's inside of me, it was this other thing that, like, I started questioning myself. Yeah, it was probably my most intense confrontation with fear that I've kind of ever experienced. But it was more anger, but also knowing that how fragile I am, or everything is, every life, like how fragile life is. Anyway, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but what I'm saying is, like, it's been quite an interesting experience facing.
How did you get through this mentally? I mean, what happened in your head?
I'm a very nostalgic person. And again, maybe it's all connected, because I love experiences, and I love memories. And sometimes I lean into memories a little bit too much. But that's kind of how I coped with the fear of this disgusting thing inside me. I could show you. I pulled out, and they're all sitting over there. I just pulled out, like, so many photos of my grandmothers, my mother, my times as a kid. I don't know. I lost myself in my memories and my experiences in life. And I went through this process of letting myself being completely overwhelmed with grief that it's over. Like, that part of my life is completely gone, to the point, because I have to admit, there's something inside of me that enjoys grief. I enjoy grief sometimes. I enjoy sorrow. I enjoy pain. And I'm really discovering this as I'm explaining it to you, actually. But I wish I could show you. Like, I literally have photos just stood up. I was just surrounding myself with, like, these feelings of a life that's completely gone. And through that, I became incredibly grateful that they ever fucking happened. Mm-hmm. And through that, the fear kind of just feathered off, to the point where, like, I'm actually okay. I'm not okay. This thing, the worst thing, because it's taken more than it could. It's already taken more than it could if it took me, But at the same time, it pulls the focus. It pulls the focus, and I have so much stuff to work out in myself, because I can become paralyzed by my nostalgic feelings. I understand that, and there's something that I like about it. It can be a little bit paralyzing, and I think that's kind of what's kind of put me in, like, oh man, we're really diving. You sure this is not like a therapy session? Because I feel this is, for me, this is beautiful.
No, it's really interesting.
When my separation happened 2.5 years ago now, and then COVID hit, and then some other things happened, and then I randomly moved to this Isoline nest that I have. I built a palace of grief, a palace of solitude, and it's almost like self-torture in a way. But again, I like the pain. I like the experience. I like the grief. And when I did this, not knowing why I did this, confusing everybody from my ex to my family to everybody, like, what are you doing? You're like, you're just in the middle of nowhere. But if it weren't for this place, I don't know how would have. It's also served as a nest for me to grieve for my mother, which passed away a few months later. It just become this. Again, I keep saying it, but it's like this nest that I'm perched in. But I've, in a funny, hilarious way, I've spent so much time in solitude when my son's not here, and just diving into myself and the grief and the experiences and then potentials. And I've almost felt like, well, this may be just an ounce of what monks do. They go somewhere and they just tune out. And I'm doing that. I'm doing that, not knowing that that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm tuning myself out and I'm tuning in. I'm tuning in to the things that make me both uncomfortable, but through that, grateful, and like I'm running out of words to explain myself. So yeah, to go back to your question, grief. I allowed grief to help process me through the fear. Such a bizarre way, but that's how I did.
You mean by diving into the grief, the fear disappeared, or by working through all these experiences and memories, you let go of the fear?
I won't say I let go of the fear, because it didn't go anywhere and it didn't come. It was always there. I think I just made peace with existing with it, if that makes.
It makes sense. But what is this fear? I mean, I think we all know, we all feel it, we all know it.
Okay, I can tell you. Okay, you were so right about knowing how to ask the right questions. I know exactly what I was fearful of, and I kept telling you there was a little bit of anger there. Anger, fear. I was fearful that I would lose the same battle to this motherfucker, and I was angry. That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. That I'm just realizing that right now. I was fearful of losing more to this thing, which made me angry.
Yeah. This is so interesting, because I think that's the core of everything, because I thought about fear as well this week, or also the past weeks. And because I thought about this, what is my biggest fear? And I thought maybe it's the fear of rejection. Maybe it's the fear of not being loved. But in the end, I think it's the fear of not having a place here or not existing anymore. And I think this, it feels for me like it's the same fear you were talking about, but you experienced in a different way, like me. And I think, because I told you before we started the recording, that I had an experience this week where I went through my fear in a swim training, but what happened then was the flow, and that I lost the time and I didn't know where I was. It was just the flow. And I think our fear is also a guide where we should go and where we should go through. And the thing is that, for example, the industry or the politics or whatever, they use our fear. Right. But once we own our fear and we work with our fear, they are not able anymore to use our fear. And that's freedom. You know what I mean?
That is a beautiful way to articulate exactly how I have a relationship with fear. You know, because we're taught that fear is this massive villain that we must slay, kill the fear, no fear, let go of the fear. what if the fear is our friend?
Mm-hmm.
What if our fear is something? What if it's us? What if it's like, and we're trying to reject and suppress this thing that's only, it's the reason for everything, actually. Like, that's exactly what I've come to in my understanding of fear. If fear is a part of me, a real part of whatever, part of us, a part of everything, why are we battling with ourselves so much? Because as you said, fear is probably one of the most powerful energies that we've ever experienced.
Yes. Yes.
And it can be used in more ways than you can conjure in your brain. That your brain can't even conjure the amount of ways fear can be used. And it is used in all these ways. But instead of suppressing it, instead of letting go of it, instead of like running from it, instead of like whatever, befriend it. Befriend it, and no one can touch you with it. No one can touch you with it. They can, because you can get hurt. You can be, there are several ways that, life is fragile, or, we're all going to die. But there's ways to, I won't say protect yourself, because there's nothing to protect yourself from. If you become friends with fear, it just kind of doesn't exist anymore in a way that can be used like in a weapon towards you. And it's not something that, like, it's almost like you de-arm it, but yet you're never going to get rid of it. You're just going to have to, it's going to present itself. And even if it's your friend, it's going to fuck with you in different ways at times, And but that's part of it. It's like, okay, so this scares me a lot, and yeah.
But the thing is, I always have to use my pictures from outside. Like, so I go surfing a lot, and I had a surf session, and it was like I was fighting with the waves. Really, I was fighting with the waves. And then I thought, okay, do I just go out of the water or do I stay? And I thought, no, I'm not a victim of this. I can change this, but there is a way. So I went in, and my coach said, stop fighting the waves. He just said that. I didn't pronounce it. He just said it because he saw it and I felt it. And then I stopped fighting the waves, and the complete session changed. And it's the same with fear. Once we stop fighting the fear, it changes.
Yeah, it does change.
Because it's also with our shadows, or with the things we don't want to be, or with like our dark side. It's also our fear. It's once we stop fighting it, it stops growing bigger. And that's what I also said before we started the recording. A lot of our fear is the fear of the fear. And if we go through this and come to the core fear, it's not that bad anymore. But actually, we have to go there, because there it's also our potential, what lies there. And I think we have to rethink how we think what fear is, because I think fear could also be love. What if fear was love?
That's so beautiful and so precise. And as you were saying that, I was reprocessing my experience that I had last week with realizing that I had this thing in my body, and then for whatever reason, letting it freak me out, letting it scare me momentarily. And I immediately dove into all the things that I've already lost. I dove into like all the people that I've loved so much and I've lost in my life, and I just longed for those moments, for those Christmases, for those experiences that I had, because that's what the fear is. The fear is loss. The fear is loss, as you explained earlier. And by submersing myself in what I have lost, I realized that they did exist. They did happen. That's the beautiful part. The biggest fear is not ever having existed. That should be the biggest fear. Therefore, we spend so much energy not wanting to be woken from this dream. So much fear, like, oh, don't wake me up. Don't take that part of the dream away from me. Don't like dude, just chill out. You're here, bro. Like, look what you've done. Look what you've experienced. Like, just relax. Again, I didn't feel in that moment that love or something else sheltered me from fear. I feel like fear looked at me and told me, chill out, bro. Chill. It's going to be okay. I'm here for a reason. But I'm not the thing you should be actually fearful of. You actually shouldn't be fearful of anything.
There are two interesting things. Like I said before, I think the fear is always, it has something to do with dying or not existing anymore in the way we existed before. Because when we change, sometimes it feels like dissolving. And that's what makes us afraid as well, because dissolving can feel like dying. I mean, I don't know how dying feels, but a time this year where I felt like this. I went to a shamanic woman this year for a week here on the island. And in this week, I felt like separated in all my pieces, and I had to put them together again in another way. And that took me weeks. Like I think it was 6 or 8 weeks until I felt whole again. But it was the most healing experience I ever had. And what we also talked about in this week was, because I had this thing of feeling pain or injure myself a lot. And she said, or we found out, that my connection to love was wrongly, how do you say? It was
aligned.
The wrong connection.
Yeah.
Aligned? No.
It was not aligned correctly.
Yes, because I had to really feel myself. I had to feel the pain, the grief, always when I was, for example, when I was thinking of my grandma or I had an aunt who died 2 years ago. Always when I really felt this pain, I felt connected to them. Also with my dad, because I grew up with a dad who has who had depressions, and now he has like these still anxiety. So, and I felt connected to him when I wasn't well, because then I had something I could talk to him about. So my connection to love was pain and grief. And once I realized that, she cut the connection off, and we changed it to something else, which was more like, I am awareness and I am love. So it took me a while, but it really changed something in my mind. And now I'm not feeling like going down all the time again, because now I feel like I am connected to everything. And I'm also still connected to my grandma and my aunt and all my ancestors. And I feel the support so much like never before. And the interesting thing is that now, like, I'm almost 40, and my dad, my whole life, I knew my dad suffering. And now it's the first time in my life, he said, I feel good. I don't have the anxiety anymore. And it has something, we are all connected. It has, once you change, someone else also changes.
Sorry, wow. Oh, there's so much there to reflect on that you just said, particularly this connection we have with my mother was also very suffered from depression, and my brother still does pretty severely. I got lucky somehow and dodged that. However, grief, that kind of grief that I experienced last week, was a form of depression. It's sorrow. It's living in this nostalgic memory, and it's just overcome with like sadness because it's gone. And then I feel connected.
Mhm.
I feel like I tuned in to the source. Like my mom, hi
Yes.
mom, you know, you're right
Yes.
there. You're right
Yeah.
there in that energy. And that was what kind of nurtured me in that moment. When you explained everything about the shaman and talking about pieces in your life, sometimes I can't help. I'm a very, for whatever reasons, I have these visions in my head as I'm soaking in the information and the experience of you telling your story. And what I was kind of seeing visually as you were explaining this is that, oh shit, we've been talking about puzzles. Okay.
Mhm.
And our life is nothing but puzzle pieces. Here's the intriguing thing. The intriguing thing is that our pieces always change.
Yes.
People come in and out. So even though we may put all our pieces in place, pieces are going to be gone. New pieces are going to be introduced. And then you got to reorchestrate the entire thing. And you consistently have to do this. And that is what this experience is.
Mhm.
It's consistently taking the pieces, missing pieces, and figuring it out. And that's why we never get to this place of, because we're consistently being introduced to new and losing pieces. And it's a nonstop. And I don't like to regurgitate too much of the masters, but I do enjoy listening and observing people that I admire who are here and no longer here. But Alan Watts was once questioned by one of his students. And this is something that always kind of resonates with me kind of through life. And one of his students asked him, so if the Buddha was so enlightened, why did he continue to meditate every single day? And his answer was so beautiful, and it just made so much sense in this puzzle piece way, because enlightenment is like everything else in life. It's temporary.
Yeah.
And you have to consistently work on it to have it.
Mhm.
It's not like you get there and you're just there. This is the same thing. You lose people, you lose life, you go to new places and people get introduced to your life and situations get introduced, and they're just a bunch of different puzzle pieces. And then you have to, I feel like I want to fall in love, and I do. And I do. I think that's probably part of my problem in life. I say problem, but problem and for myself in a good way. I love figuring out the pieces. I change my flat every week. I will say, oh, cool, that mannequin would look really good there. I think I'll put it there. So I'll grab it and I'll put it there. But then guess what I have to do? Change the whole fucking flat for that to make fucking sense. And I enjoy it. Like
Yes.
I really do enjoy it. I feel so accomplished. I feel so like, whew, I like figuring out the puzzles.
Mhm.
And we all get frustrated. I get in places where like, I can't figure this out. Oh, it just drives me mad that I can't figure out this situation either in my life or in someone else's life. And I think that's where that's kind of, oh gosh, I'm about to dive into something. Oh gosh, I'm circling something in my head. I'm circling something right now I'm kind of trying to figure out, absorbing how I feel about it. But part of me also feels, you asked for my purpose earlier. And I've had people tell me this, but I kind of feel like I've rejected the idea because I feel so much I feel so much I have to do for myself, consistently figuring stuff out, that how can I ever help someone else? But I realize that sometimes when I do allow myself to conversate and to help nurture someone else, then I'm also simultaneously nurturing myself. So it's a feeding process.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I do feel the purpose of, what if am I here? What if I'm here to help heal, not just myself, but others? And I had this internal battle with that, because they're their pieces. That's their pieces. I can't go over there and be like, put this here, you put that there, and you put that there. See, well look, here's a tree. It's good. But at the same time, I will look at this, and I'm sorry, I'm speaking in analogies, which is not always fun, but I'm looking at their pieces, and I'm like, oh, maybe if you tried putting that right there, simultaneously while doing that, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What if I tried that with mine? Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so I do feel this intuitive push to, I tread lightly with words. I don't like labels. I don't want to say but if I were to use this word or this label, I tread very lightly as I say it. But parts of me feels like a healer.
You are a healer. I don't know where to start.
Sometimes that's the beautiful part.
We are all healers in a way.
Yeah.
Because I also had a friend of this shaman woman told me this year, she said, she's also like a medium, and she said something to me, and she said, you came so far, but you have to heal this one thing. And at that moment I thought, no, I don't want to anymore. It hurts so much, I don't want to go there. And she said, but that's the thing, if you heal that, you will like go on another level of your life. And then she said one thing, and she said, the way you heal, or the what was it? The way you heal, the world heals. And it sounds like so big. How can I heal and then the world heals? But there's something true in that, because I can feel it in my family. I can see my family change. I can see the people around me change. I feel my energy change. And so I change the energy of others. So it's the way I heal, other people heal. So it's true. And not everyone has to be a coach to heal.
Yes.
The thing is, I have to tell another shaman story. I'm addicted to shaman.
I can tell. I like it. I like it. Go for it.
The listeners know this story already. But I went to another shaman guy in Australia 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. And since then, everything changed. Really, everything in my life changed. And he said something, he didn't know anything about me. He just looked at me. I was there for 1.5 hours. But the first thing he said was, he looked at me and he pointed to my heart and he said, in your heart, you are an artist, but you hide it. And I started crying so much I couldn't stop, because I felt that this is the truth. And I know that people, I stopped acting, but it's not over for me. Maybe someday I will play in a movie, whatever. I don't know, but I don't feel the motivation now to go in there. I'm on my path. I know that, and I feel it, and I'm happy with it. But that hurt me so much. And what I wanted to say is, when I saw your pictures, I thought, my God, I have to paint something. So that is the healing, also healing. You know, inspiring is also healing, or whatever.
Gosh.
Yeah.
We could just, we should do this every day. There's so much that I wanna kind of respond to or reflect in a way. But you're absolutely right. We're all healers. We're all artists. When anyone ever tells me, like, oh gosh, I wish I could paint. This is going to sound cliche, but you can.
Yes.
You know? And they're like, no, I've tried. I've checked it. I was like, yeah, well, you drew a stick person. How many days in a row did you draw the stick person? Did you keep drawing the stick person? Keep drawing the stick person. Watch it grow. Watch it refine. Watch it become what you want it to become.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta just do it. You gotta just do it. And I am someone I am a prime example. My mother was an artist. My brother, who is 3 years younger than me, was insanely gifted as a musician and as just a creative artist. I was like, well, I missed the depression bullet, but I also missed the creative bullet because I can draw my name and put some circles in it, and that's as far as I go artistically. And I was envious. I was envious that my brother was such a gifted, self-taught musician, and that he drew like my mother did. But then I realized, well, of course, I realize now, two things. One, when I was 33 years old, after spending a few years trying to figure out how I was going to be an actor, doing it the way that only a madman would do it, never going to school for it, and being in your 30s trying to chase an insane dream, that I get so bored in my time that I was like, well, I'm going to go to an art store and get a canvas and some paint. And I painted something. It was horrendous, but I loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible, but I made something. I feel temporarily like a god. I created art, you know? And so I just kept on. And I never had a goal to become an artist. I was just feeding that feeling I got from doing it. I just kept feeding myself that same feeling. Mm-hmm. And then it grew. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I do have it. I can draw something that kind of looks like what I was attempting to do, you know? And I realized that it's been there the whole time. Why am I in my 30s just figuring this out? And then I'm like, my brother is different than me. My brother is kind of, well, he's dealt with severe depression, still does. He spends most of his time to himself. He stays in his room. I was very social. I played on sports teams. I had lots of friends, and I kept myself distracted from myself, for being honest. I kept myself distracted. My brother was in his room every single day confronting himself, probably in the worst ways, being depression. But at the same time, he was nurturing. He was by playing the guitar every day, and I would bang on his door, tell him to shut up because it was annoying, and I was that kind of brother. And he would also do the same with drawing. What I didn't realize then that I realize now is that he was implying discipline to something that he enjoyed doing. That's why he was always a good artist. That's why he taught himself to be a great guitarist, because he spent all this time with himself to refine those things. And you talked about us being healers and us being artists. We all are. Of course we are, because we are this same thing. Whatever we're doing here is a process to, this is going to sound, so I always catch myself before I sound corny, because I'm always so hesitant to sound so whatever. But I feel like this is one big healing process.
It is. It is.
The entire thing. And that's where art comes in. That's where storytelling comes in, because we're consistent in reflecting. You can look at art, you can look at it, you can watch a movie and just connect with it. You can tune out with it and become these things you want to become. And you can do it vicariously through experiencing other people's art, other people's music. You can feel their pain, you can feel their excitement. It's just a nonstop therapy session that just doesn't end. This is what we're living in, one massive therapy session that we're consistently putting the pieces together with all these, new and pieces being missing. This is just what this is. So yes, we are healers, but there's things that I still have to process for myself. And I don't know what it is in my own life, that I reject certain levels of acceptance. Like, although I chased wanting to be an actor, the moment I actually became an actor, I started rejecting the idea of calling myself an actor. The same thing with being an artist. I go through phases still where when I hear myself say that I'm an artist, I want to throw open my mouth. I'm like, what are you doing, asshole? You're an artist. Ooh. I get this feeling. I get this hesitation of allowing myself to acknowledge that I am this thing, because I feel the constant process that needs to continue to happen. If I allow myself to become content in this, I'm not going to grow anymore. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a fear in a good way, that if I accept being an artist, if I accept being an actor or a storyteller, whatever pretentious label I'm going to give myself, if I accept any of these things, I will lose my way. I will lose my drive. I will lose my... And again, I understand this is a process for me. And this is also why I'm always so hesitant when it comes to the healing, intuitive feeling that I have toward enjoying the process of working something out, that I'm so hesitant to be like, yeah, I can become a healer, I can become a shaman, I can become a philosopher, I can become these things, because I'm aware of the dangers there. I'm aware of the dangers of someone accepting themselves as something and then it just losing its magic. I think we all know the feelings of being like, okay, so I embrace it. I'm a healer. I am going to be the next Alan Watts. Let's talk about life and let's grow. And suddenly in this acceptance that I'm having, I become bland. I become kind of useless. I feel like for myself, I have to continuously, I wouldn't say criticize, but question myself. But I think also I feel that that's a good thing. I feel that not accepting myself is, the things that I suffer from the most, if we want to dive in just a little bit to the acting thing, the whole reason we're supposed to be talking about the acting is that this is the reason why I've always been the worst salesman for myself. These are my weaknesses as an actor. These are my weaknesses as an artist. I am the worst salesman. I'm the worst. I don't enjoy anything about presenting myself to be something. I love working on being something else. I love the process of being an actor. I love gathering the information and putting it together. I don't like the finished product. Same with my art. Exactly the same with my art. I was the worst person to, when I got to these galleries in the US, when it kind of kicked off, and I looked at that art back then, I'm like, oh my God, that was shit. But that's good that I always look backwards and see my stuff as shit, because then I always feel like I got to improve, and therefore I do. And it's a constant growth, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, when I would go to these galleries and they're like, okay, it needs a name. You had to describe how you were feeling. And I'm like, oh God, you got to give it a name. Do you know how many times I gave different names and I forgot the names of my art pieces? And they're like, give a little description of what this means to you. I fucking hated every ounce of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like, what are we doing here? What do you want from me? You want to like bottle this thing to sell. And it's the same way in acting. I'm the worst person to do headshots to keep that side of the thing going, because I hate it. Like, I genuinely hate it. And there's one thing about me, I suck at making myself do things that I hate. I really do. I have a massive weakness to that.
Oh God, there are so many things now I want to say again. Like, okay. Again, where do I start?
I feel the same after you talk. I was like, oh my gosh.
It's interesting, the thing with the who am I? Because I have the same at the moment. Okay. The one thing is, do we have to label it? No, we don't have to. We are. Mm-hmm. It's just enough. We are. So if we keep doing what we love and which comes from inside of us, people will see who we are. You don't need a label. But the other thing is, what I experience with a lot of clients as well, is they don't want to label it because they are afraid that once they labeled it, they are not good enough, or they can't stand the pressure, or they have to do something for it. So it can be both things. But in the end, I think 1.5 years ago, when I became a coach, I wrote on Instagram, I'm a mindset coach for actors. Now I'm feeling I'm so much more than that. I don't want to reduce it to mindset coach for actors, because I feel like I'm so much more. I'm a coach, I'm a healer, I'm as well as a mindset coach, but I can't even express everything what I feel I am. So it's at the moment, it's really difficult for me to tell people what I do, because I do so much. And it's strange for me to label it. I remember the times back when I worked in the agency. For 5 years, I was the casting director of this agency in Berlin. And it felt good to me because it was my ego. I defined myself as casting director for blah, blah. And that was my ego telling myself I'm good enough because I reached this. But I was not happy with that. It was not what I'm from the inside. And the other thing is what I wanted to say, because you said we are distracting ourselves from ourselves, is that I also, at that time, I had so much to do. I created stress and chaos in my life to distract myself from what was happening inside of myself. Because a lot of people do that. And why do they do that? Because they are afraid of the change that happens when they really look inside. And once we open the space for ourselves, this is fearful because it feels strange and there are so many things coming up in that moment. And the first step for me to open that space was my moving to Fuerteventura. But then I continued with working a lot, doing a lot of workshops and having a lot of clients, and just kept going like this. The only difference was I took more time for myself because I wanted to go out in the sun and in the water. So it changed something. But when I really started to open the space for myself is when I said, okay, I stop working the whole day. I take the time for myself for half a day. I move to a place where it's quiet, where there's no distraction. And I also did this week with the shaman women, which was really helpful for that. But now I'm enjoying that time for myself. And again, it's the fear of the fear, because once I did this, it was the best I could do. And every day I feel more in my power and more calm and more relaxed. And since 2 weeks, I think, it's crazy. Things are falling into place. It's like magic happening in my life because I opened that space for myself and stopped distracting myself from myself.
Oh my God. Like, I feel like like I'm pouring some water on you and you're pouring water on me, and there's new leaves coming out, and I'm like, oh my God, I have so many new leaves now. Now I gotta like, which one will I talk about? Like, we're literally like, we're oh God, like so much you said there is so beautiful, and it's so true. Like so true. You mentioned in the very beginning this imposter syndrome that we have. This getting to a point to where we're like, okay, now I'm an actor. Look at me. I'm on a movie set. Shit, should I be here? God, they're actors. Did I sneak in the back door? I don't feel like I should be here. Okay, you just get overwhelmed with this idea, like they're gonna figure out that I'm not really what they think I am. But we all have that. We all have that.
Yes.
Everyone has that imposter syndrome. And then as you explained it, it was kind of beautiful of how fear, ego, how they're us and how they're like, because think about it. Think about what fear and ego is. Everything is here. It's not a monster that roams the fucking streets and like, you know, it's like, it's you. It's you. You are the fear. You are the ego.
Yes.
You are these things.
Oh,
and this is also why we can't escape it. We can never escape it. We will never be able to let go of the fear because you can't let go of yourself, and you shouldn't. You can't let go of your ego either because that is you. You can maintain it. You can keep it in check, which we all should, and that's probably one of the biggest problems. But you can't let it go. You can't do it. It is a part of whatever it is we are and whatever it is we're doing. It's all a part of it. And this beautiful way that you explained that you spent time with yourself, and I intuitively for myself, and listening to you talk and having this conversation with you, I realized that I've been so reluctant to ever. Okay, I'm just going to be completely real with you for a second. I've always been hesitant to ever go to a coach, to ever go to like workshops, to ever do these things because part of me felt this. Yeah, but do these motherfuckers really know what they're talking about? I mean, come on. Really? Because the truth is, we can only heal ourselves. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
But I have to look at myself. I can't pat myself on the back. I'm healing myself. Because if it weren't for other people who inspire me, I would not have the way. I would not have the nurturement. What we're doing right now is nurturing me in so many ways that I really can't. I forget that we're recording. I forget that we're doing a session. I literally had to remind myself at least 3 times in this conversation already that we're not just talking. We are.
Me too.
It's like, and that is the most for me. And I think this goes back to my question in the very beginning. And I don't know why I was felt inclined to ask you. I was like, does it feel organic? Do you feel like you're forcing it, or is it just happening? And this is what we're doing right now. It's just happening.
Right. And that's what I wanted to say. This feels organic.
Yes.
And that's also why we always have to change, because that's how my business also develops. Go with the flow. I mean, I hate this go with the flow. Yeah, but it's true. But you have to know what it means, really. Mm-hmm. And go with the flow means also we have to change. Like I said, because the old things, maybe they don't work like this anymore. But things are always changing. You have you just have to see it. At the moment, nothing is exhausting for me because I think every day I see the things developing.
The puzzle pieces are changing.
Yeah.
Consistently, and we have to work on it, and we have to take the time and the focus to sit down and put it together, and then understand, much like the monks who do this is going to be weird. I'm falling off into so many things. People ask me about body painting. Okay, body painting is something that, for whatever reason, I kind of fell into without really ever having a motive to do so. And it is such a different process than most people kind of see it. And I get it. I get what it looks like. I get what it is. But for me, body painting is always been one of the most challenging, exhausting, excruciating processes that I've ever really experienced. But I love it. I'm addicted to it because it's always, when you paint a person's vessel, particularly with the paints, you discover so many interesting things, so many different people's skin and their oils and how it reacts, how it doesn't react. And the canvas is always different. And then I'm consistently figuring out how this is going to work. And this is why I learned very quickly in the process is that I can't go in with an idea and try to achieve that goal. Like, yes, I want this to be a blah, 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 blah. I can't do that. I have to go in and completely be intuitive in my painting. And I have never experienced anything creative in my life that's more exhausting than a body paint session, because it brings up so many challenges. It brings up so much focus. There's so many things happen simultaneously: random conversations, music, zoning out, figuring out where the paint's going to go. And it's usually anywhere between 4 hours and like 9 hours nonstop painting. And then guess what? You wash it away. Mm-hmm. It's temporary. Mm-hmm. It's so temporary. You spend all of that energy. It's absolutely exhausting to do. And then it's gone. It's the same thing. And I always, and this is where I got to this conversation, is I always go back to, it feels like, again, the monks, they spend all this time to make these sand designs, and they'll spend so long to perfect. And the moment they're finished, they wipe it away, because it's about the process. Mm-hmm. And this is what I get from body painting. And this is kind of how I get, and I keep widening my perspective. And I'm like, gosh, this is everything. I'm like, God, I feel like this weird imposter syndrome kicks in at this point, because I'm starting to feel like I understand more than I think I do. And it's like, then I'm like, shut up. You don't understand shit. But I'm like, but everything is a process. And that process that is the healing part. That is the experience. That is everything. Because what is the end? The end is death. Mm-hmm. That's the picture. That's the finished project of the movie. It stopped, unless you make it a trilogy, which you really shouldn't do. But some people do. But usually, and usually, if it is redone, if it is remade, it's never the same. And I feel like this acceptance of just understanding that everything is a process. You may figure this problem out, but you got 4 of them that's going to dissolve and create itself from that. It's not going to stop. It's just a process. And that can be overwhelming, and that can be absolutely terrifying, because we are designed in our heads and constructed to think there's a beginning and an end. So we're always consistently thinking about the end, whatever that end is. I want to get to a happiness. I want to be married. I want to get to that happy place. I want to get to that. It's just we constantly have, which is a purpose too, because having that goal puts us in motion. But a lot of us, most of us, get freaked out because we don't get there and we don't just stay there. But there is no body painting that's going to last forever. There is no wall painting that's going to last forever. People tell me, like, people are always like, God, what? Like, you spend all this time on body painting and it just kind of goes away. It's kind of sad. And don't you want to put that on a canvas? Like, I painted my mom here on this wall, and they're like, aren't you sad that you can't, like, take that with you? I'm like, well, how long am I going to take that with me for?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take it with me like for infinity. There's no such thing. It's like, I can't take that with me. It was therapeutic for me to put her here for whatever reason. And whatever that process was is what I needed. Now, when I leave, I have to paint over it. Of course, there's some grief and there's some sadness there, but in that sadness, I'll be a little bit more connected to her. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. I'm just like a mouth.
No, but that's so true. I mean, I think the only thing we can take with us is us. And when you said it's not easy to sell ourselves, that's true. I mean, I'm the same. I hate selling myself. But I found out for myself, and maybe it doesn't work for everyone. I see also a lot of people where that really works. They go out with themselves. They say, here are my pictures. Here I am. Can we make an appointment? Whatever. I'm not the person that goes on film festivals and presents herself like this. But what I found out for myself is that the more I am connected with myself and what I do, by telling other people what I do and what I think, like also like we are talking, just by talking about what I do and what I think and what I feel, and by just doing what I love to do, people also start to see me. But I think at some point, also as an actor or whatever, also as a coach, we have to, or it's helpful to have a structure where people can find us. For example, a website, or for actors, all the platforms like Schauspielervideos and so on. Because if you don't have that, people don't find you. Maybe they find you because they by accident end up on your Instagram, whatever. But at some point we have to think about why do I have this inner rebellion against special things? And for example, last year I realized that I have an inner rebellion against structures.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, amen. Okay, go ahead.
And it has something to do with female and male energy. So I had a rebellion against the male energy, which is the structure. And once I realized that, I started to build up the male energy in my business, because I felt like it has to be in balance. So it really helped for me. So I think there's one part, we don't have to sell ourselves like this, but we have to make sure we are connected to ourselves and why we are doing this, and then show this to the world and make sure the world can find us. You know what I mean?
I do. God, you're helping me. You're aligning my puzzle pieces. I love it. And what I mean by that is that, okay, first off, I will say that I have been a rebel my entire life, from the smallest things to the biggest things. Like, just a quick little insight to that. Like, where I'm from in Alabama, sports and car racing and this stuff is, and it's also a very religious place. I've always questioned and challenged myself and put myself uncomfortably on the other side to just kind of understand. And I say that in a way where, for instance, my entire family, except for my father, who didn't care, was an Alabama football fan. So for really everybody that I loved, my mother, my grandfather, they were just passionately Alabama Crimson Tide football fans. I don't know why, but I was just like, oh, okay, that's cool. I love football too. It's good. Who's that other team that y'all hate so much? I'm for them. And that's just for no other reason, just to put myself against people that I loved. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And I did that with cars. My dad was a big mechanic, and he worked on cars, and in that part of the country, like you get very tribal with your brand of cars. So if you like Chevrolet, you didn't like Fords. And my dad was a big Chevrolet person. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, Daddy, can you buy me that Ford hat? I want to be a Ford fan. I don't know why. I love my father. Why was I rebelling? I'm consistently rebelling. I remember sitting in church with my mom, who is very religious, and was just such a wonderful, loving person. Never had any bad experiences in my entire life. But I remember I was maybe 10 or 11 sitting in church and looking at her going, Mom, if we were in another country, in another zone, you would believe in their God too, just because that's where you are. And my mom was just horrified. But that's just kind of how I kind of viewed the world. I consistently not really criticized. I questioned the purpose. And I say this to you because you were talking about this acceptance of being able to sell ourselves and to accept certain things. I have this all the time, not only with myself. I have to be honest with you. Like, this is, I'm sure my actor friends are going to be listening to this and they're going to cringe, but this is not anything that I wouldn't tell them to their face. My good friends, I tell this to their face. Like, I am uncomfortable around most actors because I don't like that I'm an actor energy. Yes. Because I look at it and I feel it and I'm like, you don't know shit, and I feel this way, but I feel this way with gurus. I feel this way with priests, with religion. I feel this way with politicians. I feel this way with my own parents at times. I consistently sit back and like, yeah, but you really don't know. You don't know. You're pretending. You're pretending, and I always feel like I'm pretending. The moment I embrace something that I feel as I am or whatever, I catch myself, the imposter. I feel like an imposter, and I look at everyone else as imposters. And when I get around pretentious artists who own it, they're great artists, and they know it, and they present it, I see the cracks in the foundation. I'm like, nah, I bet if we dig deep in there, I bet there's some stuff you don't want me to find. Like, I can just feel it. And I, again, this is why that I also, in the very beginning, two things. I say that I don't know anything, and I definitely don't know anything. And I also say that it's a process that I need to still work out. Maybe I do need to some point get over this rebellion question part and get to a point in my life where I can actually accept, because I've never been able to just accept. I've never been able to accept anything. And the only thing that I've ever been so far in my entire life that I've actually just embraced is being a father. Mm. That is the only thing that I've just been like, yeah, I'm a father. I am a father. That's the only plateau. And I feel like nothing else comes close to that. Nothing.
What's the difference between why can you accept that and so many other things not?
Because for whatever reason, being a father, being in my son's presence, for whatever reason, although I give him guidance, this is such a interesting thing to kind of process while I try to regurgitate it simultaneously. But I understand that I am his father, that I was in a partial point in his creation, and that I am responsible in a way to nurture him in a way the best that I can. But for whatever reason, whatever point that I've came to in my life, I've accepted that I don't know what I'm doing. And that is okay. Maybe that's it. Maybe there's this just complete, God, we're circling back to that let go part. But I don't fear being responsible to guide him, because I don't pretend, even with him, that I know anything. he's 6 years old, but sometimes I talk to him like, dude, stop talking to him like he's 44. It's like, but it's like, I don't know. But you know what? Like, I didn't come to that like Godhead of a moment of allowing myself to accept being a father until I lost my relationship. There's this place that I let myself kind of reside in of, as we talked about before, of grief, of memories, of pain, of, I allowed myself to like sink into it, but not in a way where I was like, it was never a thing that I put myself in a position where I just let it overcome me and just lay here and be a blob of nothingness and just die in my sorrow. No, it's just that I felt like I just absorbed every piece of it. God, when I catch myself sounding like a guru, I want to throw up in my mouth. But anyway, like it's like this is the constant thing that I have in my head. This is the imposter thing that consistently keeps me on my toes. Like, and I embrace this energy, this thing that constantly says, keep yourself in line. You're not special. But I've accepted the experience, and with this, I really can't articulate. I really can't precisely define how I slipped into this content Godhead like energy of embracing being a father, because it's so strange. Because although I feel like this is what I am, I've never been so confident with what I am. I also know that, dude, you're just another human that's a few years older than your son, who is going to give him some nurturement on how he's going to have to figure his puzzles out. And that's really it. Like, yeah, there's a bond there, but there's a bond that you actually share with everyone, because we're the same thing. So I don't really know how I got there, other than I allowed myself to I keep going back to pain. But maybe that's it. Like, pain is like a threshold. If you get inside of it and you stay in it, it's incredibly dangerous. Mm-hmm. Incredibly dangerous. Incredibly detrimental to everything. But if you just, God, this is when I start sounding like a guru again. When you go through it, when you just go right straight through the darkness.
Yeah.
And you keep moving. You're going to come to somewhere that's enlightened. You're going to come to somewhere that's like I am with my son and how I feel. But even that, I know is going to be temporary. Even that, I know that at some point he's going to grow up, and of course I'm always going to be his father. But I am completely lost. If I'm honest with you, I'm completely lost at where I'm going with this point. I just know that I allowed myself to come to this accepting place with him above everything else in my entire life. And it's the only thing that I won't say satisfied. It just is. I've accepted that it just is. It just is. And there's nothing about my life that I've come even close to, even my relationship. My relationship is quite complex. There's a lot of complexity to the relationship that I had. And just to give it some kind of context without going into it too deep, my partner was significantly younger than I, and also known to the both of us that the sexual orientation was preferred in a different direction. However, I won't say the word exception, because that's too, but there was just a place for us to reside together, whether that be whatever. Anyway, it evolved on to something else that's still a process in itself, but it's kind of weird. You kind of feel like a fortune teller in that way. You always saw that coming. I always saw that. We even openly talked about it. Like, oh, well, one day you're going to find another woman and you're going to move on. And that's exactly what happened. But it's almost like we just, conjured it while speaking of it. And there's a lot of complexity to that as well. There's a lot of beauty to that as well. There's a lot of a lot to that as well. But anyway, I don't even know where that came from. Actually, trying to retrace my steps is how I got to that part. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever get to a point where and this is kind of how I intuitively feel right now. I don't think I'm ever going to get to a point where I feel that I'm ever going to be that content with being something else in my life, nor will I accept in another person as calling themselves an actor, calling themselves a president, or calling themselves a baker. Like, I don't think I'll ever accept someone else's being as I do my son. You're my son, and I believe that. Mm-hmm. I consistently question everything else around that nucleus. I don't know if I've created a safe space for myself. I don't know if I've, because even that can be completely a part of my imagination. But maybe I've created this safe place through I wouldn't say traumatic experiences, but through hard experiences.
Mm-hmm. I think this is interesting, because you just said you believe that this is your son. And I think a lot of things are, do we believe that we are an actor or an artist or a healer, a coach, whatever, or not? Because that this is your son and you are his father. That's the truth. And there's nothing to question that. And maybe also the feeling you have with your son. So I think a lot of the things, I don't say we have to get that feeling for everything in life. I don't say that. I think it's not possible. But I think it's about committing to things or embracing things, like committing to a decision or embracing our fear, or like go in and not distract yourself and stay out of everything, because that's life. You know what I mean?
Yes. Because the thing is, it's a two-part answer to acceptance. Mm-hmm. I accept being the father, and I truly believe and accept that he's my son. Mm-hmm. I reject calling myself anything, a carpenter, an artist, or an actor. And I reject other people's perception of themselves that way. However, simultaneously, going back to another part of our conversation, we are all artists, and I know this. We're all creators, and I know this. We're all healers, and I know this. So there's this thing happening where I know that we all are, without question. Mm-hmm. And I question the acceptance of myself and others of that reality. So it's just strange, interesting. I feel like I've even sabotaged myself in certain ways. Oh gosh, this is something I wanted to say earlier. I kind of lost track of it. But you're saying this find a way to sell yourself, to put yourself out there. Yeah. I found a way that makes me comfortable doing so. Mm-hmm. And if you were to ever go into my Instagram, which I'm not a very good promoter, I just kind of do what I want to on it. And that's kind of how I accept myself for that to exist. But if you'll read some of my stuff, you'll see that I'm consistently making fun of myself while I do something. That's my process. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to put this poster of me of a movie coming out, or me of this art project, I have to ingrain somewhere me jabbing myself in the face comedically. That's how I get through it. That's how I can do it. I have to be aware of what I'm doing, which is feeding my ego, giving me passion. Look what I've done, guys. I'm worthy. I am worthy of myself for wanting to be an actor. So look at my thing. But look at me showing you that I'm pretending to be this thing. That's what I do. I take it and I morph it into making fun of myself doing this thing that we all know that I'm doing. which I'm feeding my ego with it. That's my process. That's how I'm able to allow myself to an extent to sell myself. I have to make fun of myself selling myself. That's how I can do it.
Which is also a way, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a way. It's just a creative way that I've allowed myself to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's true though. It's true that when I get around artists or musicians or actors, most actors, I almost, oh God, there's so much to talk about. Just briefly, I almost completely sabotaged my entire, at least German acting career, because I have no tolerance for other people's creative egos. And if I'm just being honest with you, I don't give a fuck who you are. I have no tolerance for you. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what you haven't done. I have no tolerance. And so much so that on the first day of working on a big project on a television series that's actually about to release in Germany, literally like in a week or so, I think they had the premiere even like the night before last. Anyway, on the first day of shooting, me and the director, boom, and I got demoted because there was a lot of ego in a stressful situation, and I have no filter, and I don't care. Like, and it's weird. And 5 years prior to that, if I would have been in that situation, through fear of not being accepted or whatever, I never, ever would have challenged that situation. But whatever I am in my life now, which this is a whole story, and I'll take the story for another time, but I not only challenged, but I got into a weird altercation on set with the director.
But was that different in America or?
No, this could have happened anywhere, because this is just part of the organism of.
No, because you said you kind of sabotaged your career in Germany.
Yeah, because in a way that I did, because so many things happened from that one experience. Oh God, that's a real story. And then there's a lot to say about that. I have to tread lightly because I don't want to hurt people's feelings, and I don't want to be perceived that I'm going to slander anyone. But so many things kind of trickled from that experience. Yeah, I left my agency, but I got with a better agency. I probably shook the core of some pretty big producers in Germany that will probably steer clear from me from now on, just because. And at the end of the day, at the end of the story, it was nothing but a misunderstanding from a lot of parts. The only difference is, the only thing that stands out after the aftermath is that I actually stood up to it. And that was the problem. You know, it was interesting for me. It was an interesting experience because it changed a lot. It changed a whole lot. And it, for good and for, I guess, unfortunately bad. Oof. And I'm still suffering in ways, because I understand how unaccepting I am of certain egos. And I also understand what it's like to be a creative. I understand the immense amount of insecurities that comes along with allowing yourself to put yourself in that very sensitive space of being a storyteller, of being a creator. And I understand the tools of needing to have certain stability structures that are usually constructed of ego. Like, you need ego construction to hold that very sensitive, delicate insecurity energies together. I see all that. I understand all that. I understand actors that have to play the I'm an actor part to be an actor. Like, they have to. Mm-hmm. I understand the insecurity of directors who have to come with that energy. I'm the director, you're the puppet, do as I say, because they're so insecure of what they're doing. I get it. But I can't find tolerance. I don't have a filter. If I have a friend who's being an actor, I'm like, bro, come on. once you show a few more headshots of yourself on Instagram, I mean, you show a few more little angles that we haven't seen 1,000 times. Like I'm consistently like, but I do it in a comical way. I'm not an ass. I do it in a way where I kind of like the way I treat myself. I make fun of myself in a comical way, in a way to bring my awareness to what's truly happening in the process here. But I'm also a mirror. And I say that I'm a mirror because I reflect energies. I can't help it. I've been this way my entire life. And this is kind of weird because I feel like in a way I'm not in control of my own energies, because if the energy is good, if like this warm, compassionate energy, that's just what I become. I can't help it. It's not a decision. I'm just flowy and kind of whatever. The moment there is aggressive energy, I get incredibly aggressive. It doesn't matter. I could be on a bus. And a fight breaks out in the beginning of it. I'm as mad as those two people, and I don't know why. I am overwhelmed in their energy. So when I am confronted with someone with what you would call toxic or energy, I absorb it and I give it back. I can't help it. So this director came to me with an attitude because he was stressed out because and he was confused about something. Actually, came out later that he was absolutely confused. I just didn't have any tolerance. I gave him what he was given, and that was very bad for a lot of situations. But I can't help it. At this point in my life, I can't help it. I don't know where that came from, but yeah.
It's interesting. I think we will come to an end for today because if I dive into that now, we open another new world.
Right.
And I would like to go to this whole acting thing maybe next time. But I have one last question.
Sure.
If it was the last day of your life and you could tell 3 wisdoms to the world, what you learned in your life or what you experienced in your life, what would you want the world to know?
At this point in my own journey, if it were to end tonight, what I've taken away most from this experience is that we all need to learn to accept. Acceptance is huge. And there's a lot of depth in that, with like accepting what people perceive as dark and light and all this stuff. Just accept it all. And the only person that can heal you is you. You are the only person that can do that. And guess what? You are the healing process and the healed. You're everything. You're the fear, the acceptance. That's what I would just say. There wouldn't be 3 things. It would just be accept that you are the injured. You injured yourself, whether you think you did or not, and you're the only one that can heal it. Yet, we need everything else around us. We need the people. You just have to accept everything. And this is what I have to work on, because I spent most of my life rebelling and rejecting, In a way, I found a way to accept. The only thing I've truly accepted is being a father. But again, without this rejection, I never would have found exception. It's just one big merry-go-round that just doesn't end. And if I may say one last thing as well, I find it incredibly intriguing and absolutely beautiful that we both could feel the potential of where these conversations could go. But we both tried really hard to be like, okay, let's start with what this is about, the acting, and then we'll get to everything else. And we just let go. We just let go, and we just went directly to what we knew was there potentially. And that is going to create, when we do go into the acting, it's going to be so raw and so real, because if we would have forced ourselves to go directly into this, let's talk about this, let's talk about the business, we would have tried to fabricate and portray these things that we want it to be. But now that we've gone through this process of just letting go, It's going to be raw and it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for it's so, again, I have to tell something because I'm doing channelings with a friend because we want to start something next year, and we learned this in our education, and it doesn't matter, it's not important, but
it's important.
I asked the question about my podcast, and the answer was, you don't have to stop, but you have to let go.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened today. I was telling you, it's magic happening in my life right now. Yeah. And that's part of it.
Accepting it. Yeah.
So thank you.
No, thank you. Again.
Really, I don't know what to say.
Well, it's, again, as I said earlier, we're watering each other. We're nurturing each other. And I love watching the leaves forming you and forming me. And it's just, it's a process. So thank you.
I'm looking forward to the next conversation.
I think we knew this is going to be a series. Now we definitely know this is going to be a series. Yeah, thank you again.
Well, my friends, that'll about do it for now. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us and allowing us to share our brain activities with you. And until next time, we'll catch you later.